Hi guys, my name is Paige Welch, and today I will be presenting on A Long Road Back, made in 1965, and Godly Sorrow Leads to Repentance of 1992. Before we begin, I'd like to kind of take a minute to introduce myself. I didn't really get to do that at the beginning of this course, so I'd like to do that by sharing a fun fact with you, which is that I was featured in Emma Smith My Story 2010, which is an LDS made film. And around minute 44:23, you can see my big face. I was about 9 at the time. I feel like I look like I'm 5. Anyway, if you ever do watch the film, that's me on the bed. So diving in, to discuss A Long Road Back, we see Bob, who is a student preparing to serve on a mission, and from the beginning of the film, we can see that Bob is conflicted with something. He's really struggling with something in his life. Art is Bob's roommate and friend, and throughout the film, we can see that Bob and Art talk about everything together, which is why it kind of brings up the fact that it is kind of strange, or Bob's behavior becomes strange to Art, because Bob isn't really talking to Art about what's going on in his life. Sue is Bob's girlfriend at the time, and Bishop is the religious counselor in Bob's life, who is also Bishop to Art and Sue. And Godly Sorrow Leads to Repentance. I found from like the first clip of the fiance, I found out that it was Aaron Eckhart, who you might know as Two-Face in Batman. So that's kind of interesting. We see a young Aaron Eckhart. But Godly Sorrow Leads to Repentance is about a woman preparing to marry in the temple. She did break the law of chastity, and she confesses her sins to the bishop. And through her bishop's counsel, she seeks change. And that's what we see in these 3 pictures down at the bottom. So throughout both films, A Godly Sorrow Leads to Repentance and A Long Road Back, we see 3 major themes, and those themes are chastity, repentance, and change. And these are all linked together, but I would like to take a minute to kind of define each phrase. So chastity in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you can see on the right-hand side, I have a little cutout from the First Strength of Youth, which is a pamphlet and kind of just a guideline for teenagers in the church. And this section is on sexual purity. So you can take a minute to pause and read that section. In addition to that, I have included a link to a video about chastity. It just basically defines what chastity is to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So if you do need more insight on that, you can click the link here or copy and paste it into your URL. Sorry, so chastity in both films, chastity is sexual purity, and in both films we see that the main characters did struggle with sexual purity, did struggle with chastity, with keeping the law of chastity, and so that is why I found that similarity in both films. In addition to chastity, we see repentance. And the best way that I found to describe repentance in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is through this Mormon ad. It says, "Clean up your act, soap and water won't do the trick. True cleanliness and purity comes from sincere repentance." And so the concept of repentance is basically seeking forgiveness through God. And this can be also found with your bishop by talking to your bishop. And so that's really what we see in both films, where at the end of the film, Bob confesses his sins to his bishop, as well as the woman in Godly Sorrow is confessing her sins to her bishop. And through these confessions, we see that the bishop gives them both counsel. Lastly, I would like to talk about change. And change is a major theme in both films, I thought was extremely apparent. On the right side, we see Bob. This is at the end of the film when he's in his bishop's office and kind of realizing the weight of his mistakes, but that there is a way to come back from it. In addition to that, on the left-hand side, on the bottom, we see the final clip of Godly Sorrow Leads to Repentance, and that is the woman and her fiance staring at the temple. And this change that we see in both of these, we assume that they're both going through the repentance process at the time, and we can really see their change of heart kind of grow throughout both films. Both characters are seeking higher standards. So with Bob, he's seeking to serve a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the woman in Godly Sorrow is seeking a temple recommend, or really seeking a temple marriage to be sealed in the temple. And so both of these do require a higher standard to follow and obey the laws of God and the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I would like to compare these two films to A Walk to Remember 2002. I tried to find a film that was more modern, kind of. I do realize now that it is almost 20 years old, which is insane to me. Time flies so fast. But A Walk to Remember is basically about a boy named Landon who is kind of a bad boy, but he changes because of the goodness he sees in a girl named Jamie. And Jamie is kind of more of a quirky, we later find out she's a more religious girl in his school, not his typical girl he normally hangs out with or meets. But it is a love story. It is a romance. It is a Nicholas Sparks film, so just keep that in mind if you decide to watch it. But it is a good film talking about sexual purity, as well as good Christian themes. So, yeah. So for my 2 questions I have for you. Number 1, what is your opinion on the role a support system plays in confessing sins? And this question is mostly targeted toward Bob, in A Long Road Back, and referring to his support system. So we see that, his parents play a small role in the film, but also Art, his girlfriend, and the bishop too, we see. So to continue with the question, do you think that Bob's support system failed him by allowing him to go so far as to commit sexual transgression? Or do you believe that Bob's support system was strong because they encouraged him to counsel his bishop and God? And then for the second question, it's more applied to both A Long Road Back and Godly Sorrow Leads to Repentance. But the second question is, how is change of character depicted in each film? So please answer those questions and do what you will with them. But thank you for listening.